Emily stepped onto the deserted corner of 42nd Street and Park Avenue, neon signs casting intricate patterns on the wet asphalt. The rain had just begun to ease, droplets trembling on the edge of her black trench coat as if poised to fall at any moment. She glanced at the yellow cab idling a few feet away. Her heart fluttered. Tonight promised to be special. Christopher had ordered this taxi in honor of their second anniversary, and here it was, glowing like a beacon in the dim streetlight. Sliding into the back seat, Emily breathed in the scent of leather mixed with the city's damp tang, trying to steady herself. Everything was supposed to be perfect tonight. The new bistro, the riverside dance, the promise he whispered at dawn. Yet doubt flitted through her mind. Why insist on this address? Why not a quiet dinner at home? The engine's hum grew louder, and she shivered, sensing that the world could change in an instant. Her companion entered, a tall woman with impeccable posture and a soft French accent. Her burgundy coat curved elegantly around her shoulders, and in her hand she clutched a leather clutch. Emily froze until the stranger spoke. "Don't you think the city at night feels like another world?" she asked. Emily nodded, her eyes fixed on the rearview mirror where the streetlights danced. "I was heading home, but now I'm not so sure I want to go," the stranger said, her voice tinged with worry. "My husband called, said he'd come get me. I believed him." Emily almost revealed her own destination, but stayed silent, pulling out her phone. The map app displayed a route. Point A, the taxi. Point B, their new apartment. She showed the screen. "On Park Avenue by 42nd. Chris picked me up for our anniversary." The woman raised an eyebrow. "To the same building," she said, touching Emily's screen. "Coincidence?" Emily's heart clenched. The lamplit reflections flickered like SOS signals. She looked at the woman and realized their stories had intersected at one point. Something inside her shattered. The taxi turned to the building entrance, the door opened slowly, and the stranger slipped out into the night without paying. Emily remained alone, bitterness sour on her tongue. They shared an address, and the man who'd promised her love had promised it to another. Emily stepped onto the sidewalk, facing the tower's polished windows. Her heart pounded as if about to leap from her chest. She thought of how every moment of her life had been built on trust, of Christopher's words as he kissed her goodbye this morning, and of the dress she'd held tight on the ride here. But the truth lay bare. Two women, one name, Christopher, and one street where their lives collided like threads in a tapestry. Emily closed her eyes, city lights blurring into the hum of engines and glint of headlights. Questions tore at her. Was she the one who loved, or the one betrayed? Approaching the entryway, she fished her keys from her purse and halted before pressing the buzzer. Her footsteps echoed in the lobby, a herald of a new chapter. She opened the door to an empty foyer. A rose bouquet on a side table had scattered its petals like omens of sorrow. The air smelled of cold emptiness, seeping into her bones. Emily shrugged off her coat onto an armchair, water dripping onto the rug. She moved to the elevator and pressed the call button. Its metal doors slid shut with a soft whoosh. Each floor ticked by like pages in a book she must unearth. Arriving on the 12th floor, she walked down the dim hall, past neighbors' doors, to her own. The brass doorknob felt hot in her palm. She paused, steeling herself, then pushed the door open. A rush of perfume and half-finished coffee hit her senses. On the table lay a card, etched with yesterday's affectionate note. But whose words were these, now draped in deceit? Emily inhaled deeply and stepped inside. The door clicked closed behind her, and the world she knew splintered. Her fight had begun, a battle for truth, for herself, and for a future that might never be the same. Emily moved slowly around the apartment, each step echoing through the empty space. The glow of the night lamp above the coffee table cast long shadows on the walls, still scented with yesterday's flowers and coffee. She paused by the greeting card lying on the surface, the same paper, the same words that once felt like warmth, now burned her heart. She touched the envelope, and a trace of gold wax remained on her fingertip. In an instant, yesterday morning's scene flashed before her eyes. Christopher, shyly smiling, slipping the card into her palm, whispering, "You're mine forever." Back then, she believed every word. Today, it sounded like cruel irony. Emily grabbed her smartphone and scrolled through the latest messages. "Love you at midnight. Can't wait at 7 a.m. Not a word about strange trips or new addresses. She circled the table, lifted a coffee cup, and discovered a business card from the Riverside Inn. The address matched the place where Christopher had met Claire. Her heart pounded painfully and rhythmically like a drumbeat heralding doom. Her fingers trembled as she tried dialing Claire's number. Her thumb froze. "Incoming calls from this number are blocked." The call wouldn't go through. Emily felt her chest tighten with despair, but a spark of resolve ignited within her. If the truth wouldn't come to her, she would go to it herself. From the bedroom door to the living room, she walked without taking her eyes off the screen. Every second stretched into eternity, and the silence was broken only by the echo of her steps. She opened the desk drawer and pulled out an old photo album. Pictures of her and Christopher from the first months of their relationship, laughing hand in hand by the ocean, blowing out candles on a cake, embracing at a festival. On the back of one photo, she suddenly noticed a tiny inscription, 42 PA, and her hand dropped. Tears filled Emily's eyes, but they brought no relief, only the bitter taste of betrayal. She pressed her hand to her chest, as if trying to hold together the shattered fragments of her trust. Suddenly her phone buzzed, a notification from the taxi app. Trip ended. She hadn't tapped finish. The taxi had left without her? Her heart lurched. If the driver had gone, how could Claire have vanished? She closed her eyes and drew in a deep breath. At night, the apartment felt like a foreign space, every object reminding her of lies. It was time to seek new clues. Emily approached the window. From here, she could see the courtyard. Under the street lamp's halo, she spotted a figure descending the fire escape at the neighbouring entrance, the tall silhouette of a woman in a burgundy coat. It was Claire. Without hesitation, Emily grabbed her coat and dashed out of the apartment, leaving her keys behind. The elevator stalled between floors, so she hurried down the stairs, each step pounding on her heart. The hallway seemed like an endless tunnel linking truth and deception. The lobby was empty except for Claire, who stood by the emergency exit, phone pressed to her ear. Through the haze of fear and anger, Emily saw her wipe away tears and nod during the call. When Claire noticed Emily, she ended the conversation and managed a tentative smile, though her eyes brimmed with awkwardness. "Claire," Emily's voice quivered, "why are you here?" Claire took a step back. "I didn't expect him to come to your address. I waited for him here," she explained. "You're his wife? I didn't know." Emily clenched her fists, feeling the rupture within. "He told you I didn't exist?" Claire lowered her gaze, voice barely audible. "He said we broke up a year ago. I believed him." Emily bit her lip. "A year ago? He told me the opposite every day." All her helplessness spilled out, the hurt, the anger, the pain. She took a step closer and whispered, "What do you know about his plans for tonight?" Claire exhaled and handed her phone to Emily with trembling hands. "He called 5 minutes ago. Said he was on his way here to see you." The screen glowed with an incoming message. "I'm on my way. Wait for me." Emily read it, and time froze. Emily froze in the dark apartment lobby, waves of sorrow and anger crashing through her chest. Beside her, Claire drew a trembling breath. "We need to work together," she whispered. "He's betrayed us both." Emily turned to her in the dim glow of the lamp. Pale features, dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights, trembling shoulders. In that instant, Emily realized that two deceived women were stronger than any solitary hurt. "All right," she said, fighting back tears. "Tell me everything you know about his movements." Claire pulled an elegant bracelet with a tiny torch from her bag and checked her smartphone. This morning he checked into the Riverside Inn under the name Charles Morgan. He likely planned to meet me there, but the reservation is valid until tomorrow. I reviewed the logs. He called the hotel 3 times. Emily clenched her fists. "So tonight, when he said he was coming to you, he might have redirected himself in between?" "Possibly." Claire nervously twirled a lock of hair. "But my taxi driver confirmed. Chris left the hotel at 8:30 p.m. Taxi. Hotel. Her husband was playing on multiple fronts. It was time to unmask his deception once and for all. Emily retrieved the photo album and flipped to the page with their seaside picture. On the back, next to 42 PA, she spotted another code. RI 15223. "What does that number mean?" she asked Claire. Claire frowned. "A room number? A ticket? A booking code?" They fell silent. The light flickered and shook, bearing witness to their anxiety. "I suggest we start at the hotel," Emily proposed. "We'll pose as fire safety inspectors." Claire flinched, but then nodded. "I can say I forgot my papers, and you cover for me." Emily inhaled deeply. They stood on the threshold of a bold adventure, hungry for justice, driven by a counterfeit wedding vow. Midnight melted under the glare of a passing patrol car. Emily and Claire moved like ghosts along the shadowed sidewalk, their silhouettes merging with the darkness of the skyscrapers. Emily's fingers brushed the locket, a fragment of trust ripped from her soul. Reaching the back entrance of the Riverside Inn, Claire rapped sharply, feigning urgency. "Fire safety here. Immediate inspection of emergency exits." Muffled voices answered from within, and the bolt clicked open. They slipped inside a corridor lit by dim sconces. Emily held her breath, adrenaline racing through her veins. "I left my documents in the car," Claire murmured, stepping forward. "Please inspect on my behalf." The guard shrugged and turned away. Emily and Claire bolted toward the empty service elevator. They hit the button for the 4th floor, no questions asked. As the doors slid open, the hallway lay silent. Emily spotted room 423. The numbers echoed 4 and 23, matching the code. Her heart pounded in her ears. "I'll hold the door," Claire whispered, and Emily slipped inside. They froze before a door labelled Charles Morgan. Peering through the peephole, Emily saw a man hunched over a table, the single bedside lamp revealing a tense, hunched frame, hiding something. "It's him," she breathed and gently nudged the door. It swung open without a click. Inside, half-light cast long shadows over a desk strewn with printed bank transactions, their apartment address, and a drawing resembling a four-room floor plan. A lipstick-stained box and a half-empty wineglass sat beside a wedding photo of Emily and Christopher. Her husband stood with his back to them, holding a taxi receipt and a map marked with two addresses, each underlined in his careful script. He leaned forward and whispered, "All my life, I've been searching for the truth." Emily froze. In that quiet confession lay more than betrayal itself. Step by step, she had entered a labyrinth of lies where every clue opened another secret. And she knew she and Claire were only at the beginning of their journey. Emily and Claire hurried away from the hotel corridor, each heart pounding so loudly it echoed throughout the building. The night air settled like a heavy blanket as they moved through the service stairwell. Uniformed staff flitted through the half-light, but no one paid them any mind. Both women were moving faster than their own fear. "Did you see that?" Emily gasped as they emerged into the rear courtyard. Claire's face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. He was preparing evidence," Claire whispered. "All those diagrams, transfers, the route map. He must have been plotting something." Emily paused under a lone street lamp, raindrops slipping from her hair. In that glow, she could see Claire's little torch bracelet, its flickering light a lantern in the darkness. "We can't just walk away," Emily said, her voice trembling but resolute. "He needs to pay for this." Claire nodded, their eyes locking. The night painted their distorted shadows on the wall, and in that instant they weren't just betrayed women. They were allies, ready to take action. "What do you suggest?" Claire asked. Emily pulled a small video recorder from her pocket, one she had prepared in advance. "We'll hand this to the police, but first, we need a confession. From him. On tape." Claire squeezed her hand. "I can distract him in our apartment while you record his admission at the restaurant he went to last night. He's probably still there, even now." Their plan took shape. The Lumiere Bistro by the pier, the security cameras at the entrance, the table in the back. Emily could imagine the strict chandelier light as she hit record, capturing Christopher, caught in the act of deception. "Perfect," she breathed, a weary smile forming. "We strike at dawn when the place is nearly empty." They cast one final glance at the courtyard road, then stepped back into the hotel's main entrance, vanishing into the shadows. When the first pale light of dawn brushed the horizon, Emily and Claire stood at the entrance to the Lumiere Bistro. Emily's trembling fingers gripped the video camera, while Claire hummed a calming tune under her breath, as if preparing for a performance rather than defending her own feelings. The tables around them were empty, and the dim glow of the sconces turned the room into a ghostly stage, perfect for their plan. "Is he here?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, at that table by the window," Claire replied, pointing to the far right corner. There sat Christopher, alone, a mix of confusion and anticipation on his face. He held the same little torch bracelet Claire had lost in the hotel lobby. Emily slipped behind the bar, crept to a service closet, then quietly settled at a table with the best vantage point. She switched on the camera, and the soft whir of its microphone felt like a heartbeat in her hand. She knew every frame was evidence, every word a weapon. A minute later, a waiter approached Christopher. "Good morning, sir. May I take your order?" Christopher looked up, his face paling. I'll have coffee, and a croissant, and a talk, with you," he said to the waiter, who, without asking questions, nodded and left. Emily held her breath. She could hear Christopher mutter to himself. "I came for her address, but I can't lie anymore." He stood, glanced around the bistro, then headed toward the window. Emily crept closer, never dropping her lens from his trembling form. The echo of his steps was heavy in the quiet. Suddenly, he spotted the camera. "Emily?" His voice cracked. "What are you... How did you get here?" At that moment, Claire burst into the dining room. Her gaze was steel. She walked up beside him. "It's me," she said softly. "The woman you lied to." Christopher shook his head, looking between them, desperate for clarity. I wanted to apologize to both of you," he whispered, tears welling up. "I thought I could fix everything. I promise." He dropped his hands onto the chair's backrest, guilt and remorse in his eyes. Emily hit REC and zoomed in, each gasp, every quiver of emotion, frozen forever. Christopher poured out his confession, as though unburdening a lifetime of deceit. "Claire, I love you and never meant you pain. Emily, I love you and never intended to betray you. I swear I'll never lie again and will face the consequences." His words fell like shards. All masks and excuses shattered. Emily watched him transform in front of her lens, from deceiver to remorseful man. Claire exhaled softly. She doubted she could ever forgive, but now she felt relief that the truth was free. The waiter returned with the croissant and coffee, and Emily retreated into shadow, allowing their drama its final act. The camera continued rolling, capturing the rawest moment of their story. When the waiter departed, Christopher slumped back in his chair, burying his face in his hands. The bistro was silent, a hush as if holding its breath. Emily switched off the camera and stepped out from her hiding spot. Claire followed, and they shared a knowing glance. "That's enough," Claire whispered. "Let's go deliver this to the authorities." Emily nodded. They slipped out of the dining room, the door closing softly behind them. In the corridor, early customers were beginning to bustle about. The morning had started, but for these two women, the day marked a point of no return. They headed toward a waiting cab, ready to hand the footage to the police and build a new life, free of lies, guided by the honesty they chose despite betrayal. Morning, when the city had fully awakened, Emily and Claire were seated in a police precinct. The lead detective, wearily perched behind a heavy desk, was intently reviewing the video from the Lumiere Bistro. The hum of the air conditioner and the faint click of keyboard keys underscored the gravity of the moment. "Is this your recording?" he asked, without looking up from the screen. Emily nodded, clutching the flash drive. "Yes. We captured his confession in front of 2 witnesses." The detective rewound to the moment where Christopher, voice trembling, declared, "I promise I'll stop lying and take responsibility for everything." The man's face turned ashen. He turned the volume up and leaned toward the speakers. "Well, quite explicit," he rasped. "Miss Solis, are you certain you wish to press charges?" Claire, standing behind Emily, stepped forward. "He betrayed us both. I lost 3 months of my life." Her voice quivered, yet rang with determination. "I want him charged with fraud and psychological abuse." The detective noted that in his report, then looked up at Emily. "And you?" Emily steeled herself. "He was my husband. I demand not only justice but also support to rebuild my life after this betrayal." The detective nodded, calmly making more notes. "We'll open an investigation immediately. Your statement is accepted. You'll receive a receipt and a list of available support services." When they stepped outside, the bright sun burned their eyes, as if the world's sympathy had replaced pity for their pain. Below, taxis and trams roared past. But to Emily, this chorus felt like a hymn of possibilities. Claire squeezed her hand. "I'm with you, Emily." Emily inhaled deeply. The reflections in the skyscraper windows looked distorted, but now they knew even shattered glass can be pieced back together. That afternoon, Emily returned to their emptied apartment. The walls still held the scent of perfume and memories, but every object now felt alien. She walked into the bedroom and pulled out her first journal, the one where she had once penned dreams for a future with Christopher. The pages were filled with aspirations and quotes. Now they served as a reminder that even the holiest vows can be broken. She sat at the glass table, opened her laptop, and started a new document. The title glowed on the screen: My Truth. The words flowed naturally, first hesitantly, then with growing strength. Each line was a balm for her wounds, every sentence a step toward freedom. Outside, clouds still gathered, an omen of change in the air. Emily typed, "Today, I release the past. My life is in my hands." Her fingers shook, but her prose was steady, like an unbreakable shoreline. Across town, Claire stood before the empty wall of her studio, where her art photographs once hung. She peeled off the last canvas and ran her nails along its smooth surface. To start anew means not fearing the blank canvas. At noon, they met in the cozy cafe where they had once celebrated their engagement. Emily ordered strong black tea, Claire a cinnamon latte. Hope shimmered in their eyes. "How are you?" Emily asked softly. "Stronger than ever," Claire smiled. "And you?" "I think I'm ready to live again," Emily exhaled, touching her cup. "Without fear." At that moment, sunlight broke through the clouds, washing their table in warmth. The world continued its endless rush outside, while two women raised their cups in a toast to a new chapter. Morning came softly. The first rays of sunlight gently brushed the walls of their former apartment, reminding them how swiftly nights turn to days. Emily rose before her alarm. She moved to the window, drew back the curtain, and inhaled the crisp street air, a promise of new beginnings. Every object around her now felt like a piece of the story she had just finished, but she refused to reject it. After all, even a broken heart teaches us to value wholeness. She retrieved the camera, powered off after the final confrontation, and cleaned its lens. It stood as her reminder of truth, cold yet necessary. In her hands was the weight of a journey well-traveled. From that first taxi conversation to the dawn revelation in the bistro. Now that the final chapter had closed, it was time to release the burden of resentment and start forging her own destiny. In the bedroom, she gathered belongings left behind in haste: photographs, letters, trinkets. Emily carefully sorted them into 2 bags: treasured memories and let go forever. She didn't plan to destroy cards or tear up photos. Instead, she intended to offer these relics to those who might still need them: a therapist, a trusted friend, or the detective. Sometimes, farewells aren't denial, but a generous gift to others. At last, Emily sat at the desk, opened her laptop, and completed her journal entry. "Today I free myself from the shackles of fear and doubt. My heart is no longer collateral to deceit, but the key to possibility. I am grateful for the lesson, not the pain. Now I move forward, with courage and self-love." She closed the document, saved a file titled My Freedom, and slid her laptop into her bag, as though leaving her past self in that familiar corner, ready for new challenges. At midday, Emily met Claire at a small art cafe nearby. Both women had endured betrayal and emerged stronger. Claire had already unveiled sketches of her new creations, abstracts where dark strokes gave way to bursts of vibrant colour, a metaphor for pain transforming into creativity. "See," Claire said, pointing at the canvas, "I'm painting not only what wounded me, but what heals me." Emily smiled, feeling her own wings unfurl within her chest. She reached into her bag and produced the small flash drive, the emblem of both deceit and liberation. "This is the past," she said, placing the drive on the table before Claire. "Keep it if you need to. As for me, I'm stepping forward." They rose from their table, and the barista brought them each a steaming cup of honey tea. Wisps of vapour curled upward, dissolving the last of their doubts. "What's next?" Claire asked. Emily breathed in the tea's scent and looked through the cafe's stained glass windows toward the street. "I'm going back to my dream, to write a book about finding strength after betrayal. Not just my story, but hundreds of stories from women who have walked this path. It will be my gift to the world." Claire beamed. "And I'll open an exhibition called Shades of Truth." They clinked their cups in a toast, not out of naive optimism, but with the firm knowledge of their newfound strength. Traffic hummed in the distance, but now it sounded like music, the rhythm of life where every note is an opportunity. Emily stepped toward the exit, Claire by her side. Together they walked toward the horizon, where the dawn promised a path both free and bright.